Hello patrons, welcome back to another tutorial, and in this video I'm going to be doing a horse using watercolours. And the first thing that I'm going to do is block in all of the darkest areas using the black Inktense pencil. The reason that I'm using a black Inktense pencil instead of black watercolour is just because at the moment I have run out of black watercolour and I am waiting for some more to arrive. But if you guys want to use black watercolour, then go ahead. So I'm just going to use this first to block out the darkest areas, so like the eyes and also some of the dark markings and part of the hair. So I'm looking around as well, and I'm looking to see if I want to lighten up any of the sketch that I've already done before I go in and add the watercolour, because in some areas I will want to keep the watercolour quite light and I don't want the sketch to be showing through. So I think mainly this area is going to be fine because I'll be adding a lot of dark watercolours along the whole of this area, so I don't need to lighten up the sketch too much in this area. But down here where I'm going to be doing just some more splotchy watercolour effect rather than following it exactly, I just want to lighten that up so that we don't see any of the pencil showing through. I still want to just be able to faintly see the lines, but only very, very faintly. Okay, I'm looking around to see if I want to lighten up anything else, but I think that's fine. So I'm going to go in with the Derwent Inktense in Ink Black, and I'm just going to lightly use this everywhere there is black in the reference photo. So I've got the reference photo in front of me and I have attached it as an attachment to this post, so make sure you download if you want to follow along with this piece. But you can use these same techniques on any other animal that you want as well. So you don't have to follow this exact horse. There's lots of reference photos on Pixabay that you can use if you don't want to use this exact reference photo. I got this one from Pixabay as well, so it's on there if you want to check it out. So once you add water to these Inktense pencils, they do become really black, so you don't need to actually have too much on here. You don't need a lot, a little bit goes a long way with this. It will go really black once you start to add the watercolour. And I'm going to leave certain areas white, but we can add some of the ink onto those areas, but in a lighter sort of shade. So this is going to be in a very sort of loose style. I'm not going to worry about getting every sort of detail in there, but the eye is always an important part, so I'm just going to add a bit more time and focus to this area. So I'm going to shade some of this pencil onto all of the really dark areas, all of the areas that are pretty much black in the reference photo. So the hair is really dark as well. We will be adding some other colours into this piece as well, like purple, some dark blues as well as some light brown tones. So I do like the control you can have with these pencils. Rather than just normal watercolour, you can get into all the little areas that you want to add this to and then just blend it out with water. So this kind of product is really good if you like to keep control and you find that watercolour on its own is a bit harder to control and you find it a bit unpredictable. I'm not pressing into the paper, you don't need to. It's not like with coloured pencils where you try to burnish it into the paper. What we have to do is lay it down. I am trying to lay it down quite smoothly though, so that you don't get a grainy look. So I just want to get the basic structures down. We can glaze other colours over the top of this if we want to, once we add the watercolour and other colours. Going to add some to the ears as well. The ears are nice and dark. So I'm still going in the direction that this long hair is going in. And I'm not going to fill in every single part because I do want to layer some of the colours over here. I don't just want it black. this area here is quite dark. So I want to get all of the main contours of the horse in. I do want to do this as quite a dark horse. So I do want this to look very dark and sort of magical in a way. Lots of pretty colours. I'm just adding this black to sort of base of the hair. I'm not adding it all the way to the ends at this part. I'm following the direction that the hair is going in. Even though it doesn't need to be like photorealistic, I still want to follow the basic properties and principles of the actual animals. So like the fur direction, fur length, the hair direction, and stuff like that. I want it all to look anatomically correct, but it just doesn't need to have a lot of detail in it. More of a stylistic approach. So I've nearly finished adding the black ink tints. Just going to add a bit more, look over the piece and see if I want to add it anywhere else. Remember, I'm just adding it to the darkest areas, not everywhere. So I'm just shading in all of the contours on the neck area now. All of these dark shadows. So using the pencil allows me to get in all of the basic structures first and get kind of detailed and specific like contours, so everything, so it actually looks like a horse very quickly and you can tell it's a horse. And then I like to just glaze all of the different colors over the top, add that very loose watery effect. But I definitely like to get in the main shadows, the main contour areas quite early on. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with just water and I'm going to start to blend out the Inktense. So I'm first going to start with the eye. I'm just adding a bit of water. Also blending it into that area where we didn't add any of the Inktense, just to add some value to that area so it's not just white. We can layer this Inktense if it's not as dark as we need it to be. So don't worry if it's not dark enough yet. I do want to stay quite loose with it. I don't want to be too controlled. I want to stick to the basic shapes, but also make it a bit messier so it's not just completely within the like lines and I don't want to shade in the whole area. I need certain areas to still be left white though. So with certain areas you can be a bit more controlled with it. So important areas like, for example, the nostrils around the nose, the eyes, and maybe some of the main contour lines around here, you can choose to be a bit more controlled with it and stay within the lines. But other areas, it's good to be a bit looser so it doesn't all just look really controlled. Some of these areas are looking a bit grainy at the moment, but we will be layering a lot more colour on top, which will get rid of all this graininess, or you can keep trying to blend out those areas to get rid of the graininess. So just go throughout the whole piece and just blend out wherever you've got that Inktense. Try to get rid of the graininess as much as possible, but don't worry about it too much, especially in the darkest areas, because we will be adding more paint to them anyway, so it will cover this up. So now I'm blending out this bottom bit of hair. So like with this area, I was quite specific with the outline, and then I'll be a bit more messier inside the body area. Okay, so I've pretty much blended all of this out. And as you can see already, it looks like a horse. Now we can just go and make everything pop a bit more and add lots of colours to it. But we've got that foundation base, which is really good. So I'm going to start working on the eyes, and I'm just going to get that Inktense pencil again, rub some more onto my paintbrush, a really small detail paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint that on, just so that we can get more of an intense black and deepen up the shadows in the eye. I'm going to get a little bit of brown as well. Mix in the brown. So you can use a bit of tissue to lighten up areas if you think they're a bit too dark or you've got too much paint on there. Can darken up the nose as well. So I'm just adding this Inktense to the darkest areas around that mouth area. Create some contrast. I'm going to put down the smaller paintbrush and get a larger one, so the one we were using earlier, to paint on these larger areas. So I'm just going throughout with the Inktense black and just darkening up all of the darkest areas. And blending out towards the lighter areas and using more water as I get towards those areas. So if you just want to darken areas up a bit, then use a bit more water with the Inktense. I'm using the black because this one is the highest Lightfast ratings in the set. So some of them are really not Lightfast, but the black is fine to use. It says that the Lightfastness rating is excellent for the black. So I wouldn't use any of the ones that have poor Lightfastness ratings, because then I wouldn't feel comfortable selling the work. So again, when you're doing the hair, follow the direction that the hair's going in. So this area is quite dark because it's like in shadow. So I'm adding a lot of Inktense to that area. So I still want to look at like the highlights, shadows, and get those accurate. But it's about the fact that you don't have to add all of the detail for each patch of fur. Obviously you can change this method if you want to. If you want to do more detail, you can do. I'm going to blend that black out towards these areas here. So if it becomes a bit difficult to work with, then just add a bit more water. If it's not like flowing nicely. I'm going to add some more to the base. So I'm going to blend this black out a bit further down, but I'm getting a bit lighter, adding some little splats. So I'm trying to trail it off in certain areas. Gonna add some more black to the kind of roots of the hair here. You can add it to the base first and then get some clean water and blend it further outwards. Just add some black to this bit of hair as well. Again, I'm going to blend the sides of that out. We will be adding some of the colours on top of that later on. So adding some more black to this ear. Going to go in with another layer of the Inktense. Really thicken it up on this hair. You do need to have some really dark areas in there to give it more kind of contrast. I'm getting in that really concentrated, intense ink tints into the dark shadows here. I recommend building it up slowly, even if it does take you a bit longer. It just saves you making a mistake with going too dark if you just build it up slowly. So this is the final time that I'm going to be adding the ink tints, so I'm going to go nice and thick and dark with it. I'm just adding it to areas that need to be darkened up a bit. I didn't mean to do that, but yeah, it'll look okay. Yeah, I wouldn't actually recommend putting the ink onto the brush over your drawing, but I'm just doing that so you can see what I'm actually doing. I suppose you get the gist, so I'm just going to do it away from the drawing so that doesn't happen again. adding a bit more of the dark black coming from here, because if you look at the reference photo, this area is quite dark. So I'm going to swap over to a bigger brush. I'm going to get some of that Inktense on the bristles. So I want to keep it nice and concentrated up here, and then add some water and blend it out towards the rest of the areas. So to bleed the colour downwards, I get some clean water on my brush, and then I just lay it so that this end is touching the other wet water, and I just kind of go across, and this will allow it then to blend downwards. I'm going to use my tissue to blot some areas. So now I'm just using the pencil straight on the hair to draw on some of these darker strands. And I'm going to add a bit more of this black onto this white area here. Not all the way across, just a bit overlapping it. Just to cast a sort of shadow onto it. Okay. So before I start adding other colours, I want this all to dry. Actually, I'm just going to add it over the top. It'll give it more of a loose look. So I'm going to start with this area over here, so for the face. So I'm going to be adding browns, purples and blue. So first I'm going to add some of the brown, and I'm going to start with quite a light wash just to give that impression of the brown. You can overlap it onto the blacker areas. I will be adding some like purple near it as well to tone down the saturation. Just like to add a little hint of the brown here and there. Just I'm going to add a bit of the purple as well. I'm going to start down here. You can move around a lot with this technique. Jump around. Working on the area whilst it's wet is how you're going to get the most loose sort of look to it. Going outside the guidelines a bit. So at the moment I'm just placing the purple everywhere where I want there to be purple on the piece. Some blue as well. Add some blue here. So I'm going to go and add this purple to the darkest parts. Remember, we can add some more black over the top as well. I'm just going to allow the purple to run into the nearby colours. Overlap some purple onto the nose area. So now I want to add some more black. Add some black to the dark areas. Because it's all quite wet, it will nicely mix together anyway. Add a bit more black here as well. So now I'm going to add some blue. So I'm going to dot around some of the blue tones. Just have to dot them onto the areas. They'll blend themselves in nicely. Just any area where you want a blue tinge to be. So now I want to go in with the tissue and just lighten up a few areas. Just mainly this area here. Any areas that you don't want to get too dark. I mean, you can always use white gouache on these areas later, but it's still nice just to preserve some of the areas as well. Gonna add some blue to the ear. Okay, and now I'm going to go in with the brown and add some brown in places. So all you have to do is just dab the colour on a few areas and then it will start to blend itself together. So I've nearly done adding all of these colours. In a bit I'm going to let it just dry. But I am also thinking about the fact that it does dry lighter, so parts that look really dark will actually dry quite light. So I do want to make sure everything is as dark as it needs to be, because I don't want to add too much watercolour over the top, otherwise we'll lose that kind of loose flowiness to it. Go in and add in some water to these light areas. So now I'm getting the blue and I'm just going to splatter it around. Drop it. Add some purple. Gonna get some paper and just blot this. Just going to tease the paint into some of these areas down here. Add some of the black. So now I just want to dollop some of the different colours around. I'm going to blot some of the ones that I don't really want to be too dark. Just add in some of the purple as well. So I want to add some blue around here. Can be a bit unpredictable where they're going to be. So now what I'm going to do is go in with the clean brush and just remove any of the watercolour from certain areas that I want to end up to be a bit lighter. So this is just a clean dry brush, and this just helps you to get some of those lighter areas by just lightly removing some of the watercolour. You can then swill it out, dry it on the tissue, and then go back in. So as long as it's wet, you can lighten up areas. And add in some light highlights. Add some blue here. Add some brown. Okay, so I'm going to leave that now to dry, and then once it's dry, I'll be back and we can see where it's at and see what we need to adjust. Okay, so now that I've let it dry, you can see that it's a lot lighter than it was when it's wet. And so what I want to do is I want to darken up some of the darkest areas just a bit, just to hype up that contrast and make it pop a bit more. So what I'm going to do is lay down with the Inktense pencils just the darkest areas. So I'm just going to shade over the areas that are the blackest in the reference photo. So I just really want to make it that intense dark shade. So when you add the water, it will go even darker. You don't need to add loads of this, otherwise you'll get a very thick paint form. So like I said, I just want to add it to a few areas just to hype up that contrast. Especially at like the base of the hair. So we can layer some more of the purples and blues over the top as well. If it looks a bit too flat and just too black, we can add some of those colours afterwards. So don't worry about that, about losing the other colours underneath, because we can add them back. So I'm adding some more to the nostril, into the areas around the nose. I'm going to add some dark areas over here as well. So the more black you add, the darker it will be, the thicker it will be. Same as if you add less water, then it will be thicker and it will be more black. Okay, so in a second I'm going to blend this all out with the water. So you can add some darker patches between these light areas as well. Just going over the eye. So now I'm going to go in with some water and my number 4 round aquafine brush. I'm not going to put too much water on there, and I'm going to start to blend out some of these areas. So I'm adding just the water straight to the area first, and then I'll add even more water to blend it into areas around it if I feel like I need to. I'm going to add a bit more water and just tease it into the areas around it. So I'm just going over anywhere where I can see I've added the pencil, and I'm just blending it out to darken up that paint in the area. So now I'm working on this blacker area down here, blending that out. First adding the water to the darkest areas, then I'll clean out the brush and use it to tease the rest into the nearby areas. So I am being very careful when I'm doing this because I don't want to disrupt all of the texture that I've worked on before. I don't want to cover all of that up. I just want to darken up some areas, but I still want to have that loose sort of appearance. So I'm taking care in slowly blending it into the other areas. So I'm blending the darkest part, then using some clean water to tease it into those nearby areas. So also to add some more saturation to like the blues and the purples and to make them stand out even more, we're going to be adding some like coloured pencil just to really make those areas pop a bit more. And that's what we're going to be doing on like the final stage, because if you do it too early you can't go back over the top with water-based products because it just doesn't work like that. You can put like the oily, waxy coloured pencils over the top of the water-based products, but you can't then add water over the top because it just won't be archival. It won't like stick to it and adhere to it. So I just want to make sure all of the pencil is blended out. I don't want any like grainy bits of pencil showing through. So I want to get rid of that as much as possible. Going to add a bit more black pencil down here. I'm going to add a bit more shading to this white part. Now I'm going to add a bit more of the blues, so intensify those colours. Add some more blue on top of the black that we've done. And keeping it quite saturated. Add some more blue to the mane and some purple. Add some blue as well. So I'm going to add some more of the purple and blue to these areas down here. Add the colour and then blend it to other areas with the water. I'm just basically going over the same colours that we added before, but just intensifying them in a stronger sort of concentration. Add some more blue here. I like adding colours over the top of the black so that it's not so flat. I don't really like leaving black on its own. So I really want to intensify some of these colours. Adding the basic colours and then just dropping on more darker versions. And then letting it bleed out. Sometimes you have to be very strong with your colours. Really just get stuck in and add the bold colours. Otherwise your painting won't have any sort of depth to it if you just play it safe. You have the blue. Can add some purple here. So I'm just layering the different colours, just going over the other colours that were already there. Like so, for the areas where there was blue, I'm just adding more blue. Can add some purple here as well. Add a bit of the blue around here. Give this area a pop of colour. Going to go over the eye with some blue as well. And now I just want to add a bit more of the brown finally. So I want it quite concentrated. Use some water to blend it into the other areas. So I'm adding it to the area that I want. I'm going to swirl out the brush and just use that method to tease these areas together. So you could use a larger brush if you wanted to do this part. So to add the brown. It makes it easier to blend it into other areas. Gonna splatter on some brown as well. There we go. So once again, I'm going to let this dry and then I'll be back in and we'll add our ink and our white gouache. Okay, so now that that is all dry, I'm going to go in with my fine liners now. And what I'm going to do is start with the smallest one and work my way up to the larger fine liners and create some broader strokes with them. But first I'm going to go in with the extra small Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen. And I'm going to use this to create some little details, give more structure to the horse and make it look a bit more illustrative rather than add a bit of like cartoony look to it, I suppose. First I want to start off with the eye, and I'm just going to use this to kind of outline the eye and give a bit more shape to it and a bit more detail. Maybe add in some of the eyelashes over the top. The eyelashes are lighter. We're going to be using a lot of white gouache on the eye. So I'm going to use this pen to give an impression of the direction that the fur is going in, add any little creases, like do some little scribbles and doodles around. And yeah, that's basically what I'm going to be doing with this pen. Because this is a large piece, we'll be able to go in with our larger nibs, so like the broad nib, to get those really thick lines. But for now I'm just going to add all of the little details. It is important that you wait for your painting to completely dry before you attempt to do this part though. So I do like jump around quite a lot when I'm doing this. I don't really stick in one place and work my way around, but you can do that way if you want. I think I'll get a bit bored doing it that way. I'm used to doing it like that for realism, so I like to change it up and be able to kind of just change things as I see them rather than strictly working my way around everywhere. So I'm actually outlining it as well. I'll do some of the main outlines with the broader pen. So I'll go over these lines. Add in some little scribbles near the mane as well, just to add a bit more interest. So I'm going to create little details in the fur to show the direction that the fur is going in. Because this is quite a dark piece as it is, the pen strokes won't show up really well on the really dark areas. So we'll be using a broader nib for those areas to get some strong lines to show up a bit better. But mainly in this mane we'll create the detail using the white gouache to create that kind of variation, because it's all quite dark, so we don't need to really go any darker, we just need to lighten a few areas up. So you can create like the little fur detail. So I like to create the detail, but I don't want it to be really like realistic. So even when I'm doing the detail, I'm doing it in a scribbly way so it doesn't look too realistic. It doesn't look like I'm trying to do realism. So that's why I like to do it in this style, to keep it from looking realistic. Obviously it does look realistic to some extent, but you can tell that I'm not trying to do like photorealism, and that's what I want. I don't want it to look like I'm trying to do realism and it's turned out not realistic, if that makes sense. You want your style to look sort of intentional, like you meant it to turn out looking this way. So I'm doing some loose hairs around the mane. Also colouring in some of these little splotches black, so they look like black splotches. So this is really going to pop once we start to add the white gouache and the white gel pen. So you can do as much or as little of this as you want. It's completely up to you. I like to use it to add the little veins as well. So all of the little details, shade them in this scribbly way. Okay, so now I want to go in with a thicker pen. So I'm going to go in with my F pen. I don't know what the F stands for, but it's a broader nib. And I'm going to use this to do some darker lines. Well, some thicker lines, not darker lines. So I'm using it to show the direction that all of this hair is flowing in. I want it to look like it's flowing this way rather than coming down. So it's meant to be going upwards. It's okay if this doesn't really show up. We can make the details in the darker areas with that white gouache. Okay. I can always go in with more black ink once I've added on all of the white and I can see where everything is and see what I need to add, what I need to darken up. I want to add some thin little scribbles around here. Now finally I just want to go in with this bold pen and outline the main lines, the main structures, the important parts. Okay, so now I want to go in with some of the white gouache, and I'm just going to use the edge of this to mix it on. So I'm just going to squeeze some of my white gouache on there. I want to start off with a really transparent wash, so I'm going to add quite a bit of water to it. And then we can build it up to some more opaque highlights later on. But for now I just want to lighten up areas and slowly build it up. I'm just going to blot the excess off on some tissue. And so firstly I want to go in on this white kind of marking on the horse. Get that blocked in. Also going to add the lighter area in the eye. Smudge that out. There's also a bright highlight in the corner here. And also a bit of white on the kind of waterline part. So I just want to use a very transparent wash just to lighten up areas, because some areas won't be white but they need to be lighter. And also one thing to note is that it will dry more transparent than when you put it on. So when you put it on it might seem really white, and you might think that you need more water, but it actually dries a bit darker, or a bit more transparent, so you can test it out if you're a bit unsure. I recommend testing it out before you go and add it to the whole area and completely whiten out the area. You can also use water to blend your gouache into the areas around it. So you still want it to have that watercolour sort of effect, even if it's the white that you're adding. So I still like to blend it into surrounding areas. Don't worry if you go over the black lines that you've created. You can go over them and they will also still show through, as long as the paint is somewhat transparent. I'm going to add some of the highlights into the actual sort of mane, well, hair area up here. I want to indicate the direction that the hair's flowing in. I really want this to be quite transparent at the start. We can build this up in a minute if we need to. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to use my finger to blend it a bit. And what's nice is that it isn't going just to a white colour, it's going to the lighter blue, so we're still keeping our bright colours. And that's because it's transparent, so it's just lightening up the colours that are underneath, which we have a lot of blues in there and a lot of purples. So they're showing through now. I'm adding some more opaque white to the sort of mid sections of the hair where it's at its brightest. So now I want to lighten up this area. I'm going to use the gouache and the water to blend that out. So I'm going to add a bit more white. This will dry a lot less opaque. Like you can see this area here, we added the white and it's dried a bit darker. So use the water to blend that out. So adding those highlights to that hair has really helped make it look less dark, really brighten it up. Just going to add the highlights here. I'm going to use my finger to blend that up. Just adding a highlight to the base part here. Again, I want to blend that out. Add some more white. Now I'm going to add the highlights to the nose area. So I'm just adding this to wherever there's some sort of highlight or where any area needs to be lighter. So now I'm just going to blend this out. Now I'm going to brighten up this white marking. Thicken it up. So now I'm going to add some brighter white gouache. Really want to start brightening up the areas. I'm going to blend that out with my water pen. I'm just blending this white gouache out. So I'm just adding some highlights again with still a transparent wash. I just want to make a few of the areas just a bit lighter. going to add just a bit of white to this area, just to lighten it up. Just want to lighten up this area around the eye now. I'm just looking at the structure of the horse as a whole and seeing where I need to lighten up. So you can also lighten up areas to indicate the direction that the little bits of fur are going in, to help give some sort of guidance as to the direction of the fur. But because the horse has fairly short fur anyway, it doesn't really matter too much about that. If you were doing an animal which had long fur or longer fur, then you might want to use the gouache to create some sort of fur texture and add in some fur like we did with the hair. So you can also use lighter versions of some of the other colours, so like the blue, use some lighter versions of them to help create the highlights. get some real whites going on in this bit of the hair. So I'm going to add some lighter hairs there as well. So it's important just to keep looking at your reference photo, looking at your drawing, and see what you want to change. Just doing the details on the eye again. Gonna get a clean finger to blend this. Add some white to the ears as well. So now I want to go in with the white gouache and basically create sort of like an outline around some of the parts of the face to add a bit more structure and just to really make the main kind of contours pop a bit more. Just need to make everything pop a bit more. So I'm just going to use this Pentel water brush pen. I'm just creating these basic lines. So I'm just going to use tissue to block this area. So I want to keep adding these white highlights, just keep going. Keep on intensifying the highlights until you're happy with the result. Remember, you can go in with the black again if it gets too light and you need to darken up certain areas. I'm going to add some little white splotches, with splatters. Give it a nice little mystical look. Just want to create a few more little splatters with the white. Okay. So because there's a lot of splatters going on around here, I'm just going to lift some of them up. So now I want to go in with the white gel pen, just to really get some sharper edges, add some little details. add a little white outline around little parts as well, make it a bit more interesting. So I'm adding a white line around sort of outside bit of the horse. You can also add that with a bit of white gouache as well. So you can add little scribbles with the white gel pen as well. I'm going to go back in with the broad ink pen. I'm going to use that again to add in the base for the hair. And you can go over any areas of white gouache that you want to go over and darken up. Okay. So I'm adding lots of little doodles with this black ink pen. So this is the thickest pen that I own. Go back in with the extra small to go over some of the doodles that were covered by the gouache. So I'm going to go back in with the white gel pen. So I'm nearly done adding the pen. There's something about this at the moment that I don't really... There's something missing. I don't know what it is. But it's just not quite where I want it. I'm going to try and brighten up some of the blues and purples, and I'll see if that changes anything. Just want to add, maybe create a highlight in this eye. Just going to add some brown to the eye. So now I'm just getting some of my blue coloured pencils together. So I'm just going to try and brighten up and make some of these blue areas pop a bit more. Add a bit more saturation to them. maybe add some blue into the white gouache on the hair. So wherever there's the blue, I'm just adding some of that. I'm just going to go and blend that out. So switching over to this other blue. I'm going to add some of the brown ochre as well. So this is like to add a bit more saturation to some of those brown areas. Make it a bit more vibrant. I'm going to add a bit of white around the eye. I think this might help. Yeah, I think that definitely helps a bit. Because there's just something missing and I wasn't quite sure what it was. Add some little eyelashes going over the front of the eye. So now I'm just adding to the purple, just to build up that saturation, just using a polychromos pencil. Just really to make these areas look a bit more saturated. I don't go to the edge because I still want that watercolour effect. I'm going to add some as well to the hair on top of that gouache. Okay, and now I just want to create a few like black drips. So I'm just drawing where I want the drips on with the Inktense pencil. I'm going to use my smallest paintbrush. Just gonna wet it. I'm going to use now the ink straight onto the paintbrush to paint these on. Just want to create some black drips. I'm also going to splatter some of this on as well in a second. I'm going to add a very faint drip here, a very thin drip as well. So I'm just adding these little final details before this one's finished. So it's good to change the sort of darkness of them, so have some that are stronger, some that are thicker, some that are thinner, and also lighter, more transparent and faint. Going to do a purple drip coming from the hair as well. So I've just got a bit of purple on the brush. Going to add a blue drip next to it as well. So to make it look more realistic, you don't have to catch it on every bit of the paper, you can skip a bit. Anyway, that's it for this painting. I hope you enjoyed it. The only thing left to do is just quickly sign it. There we go. So please send me in any attempts that you've made at this tutorial or any other animals that you've attempted, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye everyone.